simple. It's very consistent. Jon was sanctioned the first time it showed up in his system, sanctioned for 15 months for what, McLaren ultimately determined was non-intentional use. So those out there that's saying that Jon got off scot-free, an independent arbitrator determined that he didn't do anything on purpose. It was, however, it got into his system. He still got 15 months. Frank Mir, this wasn't the second occasion where there were still remnants from the first time. He was sanctioned via strict liability. Same with Tom Lawler. Now, Frank Mir, at least what they had in common, it was the same substance, but Tom Lawler's was a completely different substance, ostrine. We're not talking about long-term metabolites that stick around. We're talking about the parent compound, a SARM, which is anabolic steroid-like. So apples and oranges. So those that are comparing these cases, there's no case that's truly like Jon's, where he's already been sanctioned, and then it reappeared, and the experts determined it was still from the same sanction. It's classic double jeopardy clause. You don't punish someone twice for the same, action.
But the opinion that it is double jeopardy, how can that be said? There's no scientific papers that have been written to say that this thing can actually last 17 or 18 months.
Correct, but you have to look at this compound. And again, these are I'm relying on the experts that USADA accumulated. I'm not a scientist. I'm a finance accounting background.
Papers, don't you need to consider that?
Well, that's a question that you need to ask USADA. They're the ones that I've had some very absolute statements from 3 of the top anti-doping experts I'd consider in the world, that all of them said there is no evidence of re-ingestion, and there is also, maybe most importantly, no evidence that he would retain any performance-enhancing benefit tomorrow night. And so, I've got to rely on those, and I'm confident in those scientists and their opinion.
Aren't those experts all linked to USADA, though?
No, not necessarily. Smurtle, Dr. Daniel Eichner is one of them. He runs the Salt Lake City testing laboratory. Now, USADA uses his laboratory to conduct tests, but he's not a USADA employee. All he sees when it comes into the laboratory is numbers. It could be an NFL test, a Major League Baseball test, an Olympic test, a UFC test, and as he's analyzing these numbers, he didn't know who it belonged to. So I'm very confident in Dr. Eichner's ability and expertise. Well, just look at the scenario. So you have, and let's take Jon out of the equation. Let's say that I go to the gym and drink my training partner's protein shake, and there happens to be a small amount of oral turinabol in it. Gets in my system, and I'm tested and I'm sanctioned. But ultimately, and again, this is just, I'm not saying this is the case, but let's just say in theory, there's some dynamics where this metabolite stays with you forever. So you guys answer that question. Do you think I should never be allowed to fight again? I don't think that's fair. So I think you've got to objectively look at each independent case on its own set of facts. And again, based on what these experts are telling me, and that's all I can rely on them, they're saying there's zero evidence that he did anything wrong again. He's already been punished. You look at both of Jon's cases, Richard McLaren, maybe the most credible anti-doping guy in the world, and or his group, in both written decisions, said that Jon obviously Jon be the first to admit he made some lifestyle, mistakes that probably could have avoided this, but in both instances, they determined this was non-intentional. Despite that, Jon's been suspended for 2.5 years, just presented a $200,000 plus check to the state of California. He's probably lost out on tens of millions of dollars. Those that are out there saying that Jon's being let off easy, holy smokes. The heart of probably, his career as an athlete, he sat on, and again, I'm not saying that's wrong. There is strict liability in this. You need to have a deterrent so that people are careful about those decisions that they make in their life. But I think a 2.5-year suspension and, a couple $100,000 in fine and lost income of likely tens of millions of dollars for Jon is a severe punishment and a deterrent for others looking at his case. Well, we're doing, I think, 3 main things that hopefully are going to address and hopefully minimize these issues going forward. Number 1, our increase in testing. Look, the reality is, if Jon, especially the July 2017, if he had not had those negative tests on July 8th or July 7th and July 8th, I don't think there would have been a way for USADA and the science to show that this was non-intentional ingestion. I think actually more testing acts to protect our fighters. Secondly, I mean, a big issue that we see, a lot of these low levels are due to supplement contaminations, and it's maybe the most common question I get. These athletes say, hey, what supplements are USADA approved? And my answer is, well, USADA doesn't approve any supplements, but as soon as I say they don't approve any supplements, everything else I say goes in one ear and out the other. They want to hear from me, what supplements am I allowed to use that USADA approves? We are, I think, early next year going to have an approved line of supplements that basically will tell our athletes, use these. If anything happens in one of these and we can prove it came from it, it's basically a get out of jail free card. I mean, you may have to sit on the sideline while whatever was in there clears your system, but it's a get out of jail free card. Major League Baseball has done that. In comparison, we had, I think, 2,800 tests last year. Baseball did 12,000. They had 0 contaminated supplement cases. So look at that, because they have an approved line of supplements that all their players know. These are approved by baseball. I can use these. I think that'll go a long way in solving that. And then obviously the last issue going to be, you know, the threshold issue and taking the recommendations of that working group. Lance Armstrong is probably one of the biggest frauds and cheats in professional sport. And he's out there making judgments, you know, again, I think he's the least credible guy to make those types of judgments. These same experts that are, you know, doing these studies and putting out these facts are the ones that basically exposed him as the biggest fraud in sports. So in my mind, that guy has no credibility. He can say whatever he wants to say. I don't pay him any attention.